Welcome to Meet the Bloggers. I'm your host, Jane Huber. We've got a great show ahead for you today, as we always do. And I've got a great topic for you guys today as well. You know, on this show, we don't do lipstick or pig discussions or how much Sarah Palin's Tina Fey glasses cost, $380, and she's got 7 of them. But you didn't hear that from me. We do real issues, and today we're going to do one of the top issues for a lot of people. In fact, as a blogger on treehugger.com said, it is a bottom line issue for most folks, and that issue is being green. And I can't imagine a better guest to discuss that with than Simran Sethi. She's an environmental correspondent for CNBC. She's a co-host of a program on Sundance Channel called The Green, and she teaches at the University of Kansas. She blogs at HuffingtonPost.com, among others. And get this is my favorite. She was EarthFirst.com's 25 hottest girls in green. She was on that list. Now, Simran, I'm a little the 25 hottest guys in green, but I'm going to let it go, and I want to welcome you to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well. I'm sorry. I did vote for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. At least somebody's looking out for me. All right. So, Simran, let's talk about what you've written. You wrote that Drill Baby Drill is short-sighted and unsustainable. Yet, Congress just passed a bill, 236 to 189, expanding offshore drilling. Are they short-sighted?
Yes. They are short-sighted. I think there's been this sort of, hue and cry since George Bush lifted the executive ban on offshore drilling, that this is what we need to do in order to relieve some of the pains that we're experiencing at the pump. But the actuality is offshore drilling is something that requires the building and the creation of infrastructure. So even if we started right now, we are not going to see the effects of that for a decade at the very earliest. In addition to that, when you think about the amount of revenue that might be generated from this, this is part of the reason that I appreciate the bill that the House just passed, but think that, again, we're still short-sighted and unsustainable in the sense that drilling offshore will reap, as the United States, we have about 3% of the world's proven oil and petroleum and crude oil resources, 3%. Now, what offshore drilling could reap for us is probably, according to the Department of Energy's Energy Information Administration, 0.25%. So not only is that not going to have an impact on world market prices, it's not going to alleviate our immediate concerns around home heating costs or petroleum costs anytime soon.
You know, this is one of my pet things, Simran. They say that we would get the oil if we drill, baby, drill, but as you point out there, we're not getting the oil. ExxonMobil is, and they're going to sell it to the world. And that 0.25% that the oil reserves would go up that you're referring to, what does that get us? Cents? You know, if we're lucky, we save a couple of pennies in 2030. Is that how it works out?
Well, what this bill is actually going to do is going to put some of that revenue into building a renewable energy infrastructure for the country. That's the reason that I'm okay with this compromise. Now, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has said repeatedly she's against offshore drilling. John McCain was against offshore drilling before he was for it. It's only really people like Sarah Palin who've been beating this drum, but I think it doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of the environmental degradation and the cost and the slow rate of return that we're going to get. But if we are going to do this, then at least what this bill does is ensure that that money actually goes into building an infrastructure that's smarter and that will sustain us over the long term.
So let's talk about that infrastructure. Where does it take the money and actually put it into projects, or does it put it into research? Where does the money go?
It's going into actual projects and to build the infrastructure. And what's happening is the individual states are not going to recognize the revenue or the royalties from offshore drilling. That's another thing that makes this really interesting, because it's not going to be that one state is all of a sudden going to experience a windfall, once we start this drilling. What's going to happen is that money is going to go back into a pool, and it's going to support renewable energy infrastructure, along with taxes that are going to be placed on big oil that will also be coming into that same pot. So if we were going to wait for the royalties from offshore drilling, it's going to take a while, but the revenue that we can recognize from taxing big oil is going to come a lot quicker, and is going to enable us to achieve that energy independence that's so often touted.
People talk about renewable energy in vague terms a lot of times, unfortunately. I want to make it a little bit more specific. What are the different kinds of renewable energies that money would go towards, and what do you think out of those is probably the most fruitful?
the different types of energy it can go to is everything from wind, solar, natural gas, geothermal energy. I mean, there are a host of possibilities on the table. And my concern is what is often talked about are clean coal technologies and carbon sequestration. Now, the whole notion of clean coal is an oxymoron. To actually put those technologies in place would generate more carbon emissions than it takes from a normally running coal-fired plant. In addition to that, because most of our energy in the United States comes from coal, about 90% of our energy right now, we actually have to look at other things outside of climate change when we think about sort of what coal does to not only our economy but our environment. Coal is, of course, the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the country. In addition to that, it's the largest source of mercury contamination. So this is why we can't, eat our fish. This is why our air is polluted. These are problems that we're not talking about, but instead what we're hearing is the panacea of clean coal technologies, which the Department of Energy actually shut down the plant that they were trying to open because of the cost, right? Or carbon sequestration. We're going to pump all this carbon into the ground. It's going to be fine. These things are not fine. They're short-sighted. We need to look to solutions that are going to make sense. A lot of people have also put nuclear energy on the table. The line from the Obama campaign is that Barack Obama is agnostic or is considering nuclear in the mix. But I would argue that nuclear is not what we need to be doing. The cost of ensuring that there wouldn't be any fallout from any sort of nuclear leak, from updating the nuclear facilities we have, those costs can be poured into things that would make a lot more sense for us. I live in the state of Kansas. Wind technology here is abundant. We have the third largest wind capacity in the country, but instead we're arguing about building a new coal-fired plant. We need to really utilize the resources we have now and start to build an infrastructure so we can generate what we call baseload energy off of these opportunities.
Is wind realistic? Is that can that really get us enough energy to start replacing some of that coal that we're talking about? And should we right now be saying, instead of drill baby drill, wind baby wind?
Wind baby wind, blow baby blow, I think would probably be the apt description. I would say no. If you're just talking about wind, absolutely not. Baseload, what I just referenced, is the idea that we're going to have a constant supply of energy running. So wind, we are not able to harness wind and solar technology when the sun isn't shining and when the wind isn't blowing. Natural gas is a great alternative. Geothermal energy can also support baseload needs. So I think what we need to do is look at a mix of energy solutions that will work in conjunction with each other and really capitalize on the diversity in the country. Look to Nevada for solar energy. Look to a place like Kansas or Texas for wind energy. I mean, some places like Texas, of course, have both. But that's a way to really recognize the real vast resources we have within a specific area and localize jobs, really build what we call a greener economy and enable a lot of people who are suffering from the effects of this recession to capitalize on the skills they have to transition into other kinds of jobs and to really build a cleaner, greener economy.
Real quick, Simran, how about our cars? What do we put in our cars? We can't put the wind in our cars. So what's the best alternative there in terms of renewable energies?
Well, a lot of people would have you think that we can also right now work with hydrogen cell technology, and so our only byproduct will be water. We're not there yet either. Where we are is with hybrid technology, and I think that there's a lot that we can still explore in regards to hybrid technology. We've taken a sharp turn and started to really we've grown, right? We've turned our fields into sources for fuel by growing corn for ethanol. I think that's a really unsustainable solution. When you look at a place like Brazil, they've taken sugarcane and turned that into an input for fuel. So they blend sugarcane with traditional petroleum, and they use that to power their vehicles. Rather than exploring and continuing to grow more corn as we've done, which is devastating farmers, not only because the cost of land has grown so exponentially that people can't afford to grow anything but corn, but the amount of inputs that are required, the fertilizers that not only end up on the corn but end up in the soil and back in our water supply, the pesticides, the water that it takes to grow corn, these things are really unsustainable, and they're impacting the commodity price of corn as well. And as we know from Michael Pollan, corn is in everything we eat at this point. So what we need to do is look towards what we call cellulosic technology, cellulosic ethanol. It includes the switchgrass that George Bush once talked about in the State of the Union address, and it's waste products. It's the stems of plants. It's stuff that we're not currently using, but that we can really exploit. Right now, we get about 25% more yield from corn ethanol, but we could grow that to 80% and get 80% more energy from something like cellulosic ethanol than the amount of energy it takes to actually grow it.
I knew switchgrass was going to be the answer. Who knew Bush was right about that? All right, now there are some things the Republicans apparently were not right about, and the entire Congress wasn't right about because they failed to pass a bill in 1990 that actually would have addressed some of these issues, Simran. What was that, and what difference would that bill have made today?
Okay, right now you hear all this hue and cry about drill, baby, drill, but the truth is we need to think about fuel economy standards, something that doesn't seem very sexy, but that 1990 bill you're referencing would have put $450 into every person in America's pocket, and we would have saved the amount of oil that we roughly import from the Persian Gulf every year. So, you know, John McCain has been talking about people who aren't our friends that we have to rely on for, in order to get our energy needs met. The truth is most of our oil and petroleum needs are met by Canada, then Saudi Arabia, then places like Mexico and Venezuela. If we really want energy independence, what we need to be doing are thinking of conservation measures and fuel efficiency measures. Those things aren't sexy, but they're necessary. And that is the only solution to creating not only a cleaner environment, but a robust economy.
And by the way, that bill would have also, I know this because I read it in one of your posts, would have saved every American $450 in gas costs. I mean, that's real savings. That's why I talk about how real bills have real consequences and elections have consequences if you don't get the right people into office. But Simran,
there's another bill on the table right now that we really need to urge our elected officials to support. There's
another bill you said?
That promotes fuel economy standards, and we really need to continue. They passed a bill at the end of the year, and we really need to hold them accountable for passing that bill and ensure that the Transportation Administration is ensuring that we are creating vehicles that are going to achieve higher fuel economy standards. So none of this 25 miles per gallon business anymore. We need to boost our fuel economy standards so we're getting more efficient usage out of our vehicles. We need to reduce the amount of vehicles that we put on the road. We need to support public transportation efforts throughout our country, and we need to get out of vehicles altogether and start walking and riding our bikes and doing all the things that sound really simple but really would make a difference if we did them in a collective way.
Right, that has two green advantages. One, it's environmental, and plus it saves us green as in money. So I think we can get a lot of Americans behind that. Simran Sethi from CNBC and the Sundance Channel, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys, we're going to come right back when we're going to meet our bloggers. That's what we do on the show. And everybody check out the live blog in the meanwhile with Todd Beaton. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, it's Jim Gilliam at Brave New Foundation. We need your help to make Meet the Bloggers. Come to meetthebloggers.org and give us your ideas for guests for the show, questions to ask guests that are coming up, issues that you want to see covered, your favorite bloggers that you would like to see on the show. And you can also participate live every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern and ask questions while the show is actually going on the air, and participate in live viewer polls as well. So check it out every Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern at meetthebloggers.org.
Hi, I'm Cenk, host of Meet the Bloggers, as you can see because you're watching the show. I wanted to let you know it's not just us doing the show, it's all of you guys. We absolutely need your participation and your help and your support. Which guests should we have on next week? Which bloggers should we have on? Who's got great ideas out there on the internet that we should be talking to? And what should be the issue of the week? What's the most important issue? We also listen to your polls, and we want to integrate that into the show. So we're all doing the show together. Which the London Times recently named one of the top 50 eco-blogs. That's great. That's another list I'm not on. Really appreciate that. He's also, of course, a contributor on Huffington Post, and he's a familiar face here at Meet the Bloggers. Kate Shepard is a new blogger for us. She writes for Grist, where she covers politics, environment, and labor. Kate is based in D.C., and believe it or not, this is a true story, was once kidnapped by the KGB. That is badass. But we'll have to do that on another show. I'm dying to hear that story. Brad Johnson is also joining us for the first time. He's with the Center for American Progress. He's the founder of hillheat.com. He's also the co-author of Techno Manifestos, which he assures us has nothing to do with the Unabomber. Welcome to the show, everybody. We appreciate you coming on. Kevin, I want to start with you. We hear a lot when we talk about global warming and renewable energies about polar bears. Is this all about polar bears?
No. Well, I do appreciate all the good work that the environmental movement has done around polar bears, and I get what they're getting at. They're trying to make it the iconic figure. But as far as convincing people to move to sustainable energy and move forward on investing in renewable energy and solving the global warming problem, I don't think polar bears is going to answer it. We need to be much more powerful in the messaging and tie these things to things like energy security, the war in Iraq, the issues and conflicts in Iran. The same things that will solve those problems and this top-of-mind issue of energy security will solve the problems of global warming.
Well, I want to discuss the economic issues too. We'll get to that in a second. But first, Brad, let me work off what Kevin just said there. How is renewable energies a national security issue?
Well, there's a number of fronts. On the supply side, you have the situation where the fundamental issue is that we're dependent on oil, coal, natural gas, other fossil fuels, even uranium that we get that are part of a global market. If it's oil, for example, we're pretty much completely dependent on foreign oil because we use 20% of the world's supply, 25%, and we have about 3% of the reserves. And so all of as your previous guest was talking about. And so that's the supply side. Basically, the only way to deal with energy wars that we're trapped in is to use renewable energy, since that's the only truly American and sustainable and renewable source of energy that we have, and of energy efficiency. And then on the pollution side, we have the fundamental national security issue of climate change, global climate change, that actually the U.S.'s top intelligence analyst, Thomas Finger, right on the day before the 7th anniversary of September 11th, came out with what essentially the intelligence community's assessment of what is going to be the fundamental national security issues for the United States and for the world going into the next several decades. And it's all about climate change. It's the droughts, the water wars, the extreme weather events that we're already seeing are devastating our nation right now. That is what is going to be driving our national security, and the global conflicts starting now.
It's interesting because we almost never talk about it in present day discussions. We have a presidential debate going on, et cetera, but it's almost never treated as a national security issue. But Kate, it turns out the National Intelligence Estimate was quite concerned about this, as Brad has pointed out. What did the NIE have to say about it?
The National Intelligence Assessment pointed out that, yes, like Brad said, climate change will cause a lot of different international conflicts. I mean, there'll obviously be resource wars over water. There's actually a story in the news today that there's a drought in Kenya that, people have died already because they're fighting for water resources, and we're only going to see that increase. And then obviously there'll be huge migration if we have these resource constraints, and obviously increased, scientists have pointed out that we're going to have increased catastrophic weather. So all of these things cause a lot of chaos in civil society, which obviously is going to be a national security concern going forward.
I believe there might have already been a couple of resource wars in the Persian Gulf over another liquid, but I'm not quite sure what it is. I'll have to think about it a little bit more. Let's go to Kevin then. Kevin, as far as an economic issue is concerned, why should Americans get behind this if their main concern is, hey, how much money am I spending at the pump, and I got to worry about what I'm putting food on the table for my family, and I can't be worried about these esoteric environmental issues?
Yeah, sure. Well, they don't need to look any further than California. They've been the leaders on energy efficiency and investment in renewable energy for a long time, and now with the measures that Governor Schwarzenegger is bringing in, they're seeing massive influxes of venture capital dollars as well as a lot of new jobs. You know, average job in the renewable tech sector is around 40,000. You know, so these are good jobs, and California is taking a lead. They streamlined their regulations. They've brought in incentives for these companies to come and invest in California, and they're having a boom that makes the tech bubble look like small potatoes compared to what's going on there now. And there's no reason that model in California cannot be extended to the rest of the United States.
So we can get new jobs, green collar jobs as people call them, as California has already proven, as Kevin points out. Kate, what about other economic benefits to the economy? How does renewable energy save us money?
Well, obviously, if at some point in the future we put a price on carbon and make carbon-based fuels more expensive, we can start expanding the economy and leveraging wind and solar and other resources out there. So obviously that would be a boom for the economy. There's a lot of production jobs involved in building turbines, building solar panels, installing them. There's almost, you can look at it and see the possibility for millions of jobs that could come from a renewable sector. Then we also have to look at Michigan and the auto industry. Obviously, a lot of plants that build SUVs and these big gas-guzzling automobiles have closed down in the last couple years. And really, Michigan could be retooling their plants and making more fuel-efficient cars that people here want to buy, and then we could also be selling them to other countries. I mean, right now, obviously, you see that cars from Japan and other areas are much more fuel-efficient than things that we've been seeing here. So there's really an opportunity here to invest in making our cars in Michigan more fuel-efficient. I think that's what folks are trying to get better about talking about that and saying that, this is not just a national security concern, not just an economic concern, but it's also kind of this patriotic thing that we can start building things here and selling them to other countries.
Yeah, wind, made in the USA. All right. So now let's talk about the candidates and what they promise in terms of change in this area. So, and luckily we have a video to show you guys right on this topic. Brave New Films and the League of Conservation Voters have come out with a video about McCain and his longtime buddy, Big Oil. Let's watch.
Renewable energy to transform our economy? Create jobs and energy independence? That's John McCain.
But a broad federal moratorium stands in the way of energy exploration and production. And I believe it is time for the federal government to lift these restrictions and to put our own reserves to use.
Drill, baby, drill.
Psst, do something.
See, there's something incongruous about this, because every once in a while John McCain will be lauded for his efforts on global warming by people including Al Gore. And then you look at the League of Conservation Voters' lifetime record, and John McCain, of course, has been in Congress for 26 years, and out of a scale of 100, he gets 24, whereas Barack Obama gets a 96 score from the League of Conservation Voters. Kate, what's up here? Is John McCain going to fight global warming, or is he not?
Well, I think what's up here is that he was one of the first people to really want to address the issue in Congress. He proposed one of the first climate change bills. He was one of the first Republicans, definitely, to champion the issue. So he's gotten a lot of credit over the years on that. And he's also wanted to protect the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. He's done good things for national parks and open space. So he's gotten green cred over that, and actually LCV endorsed him in his Senate race. But actually this year, I mean, he's gotten a lot worse on those issues in this campaign. Obviously, he started calling for offshore drilling, which he obviously in the past didn't want to do, and now he's been talking a lot less progressively on these issues than he used to. I think he realizes it's a concern. Obviously, he talks about it, which is far and above what we've seen from the current president.
See,
he
Kevin
talks about the campaign trail, but it doesn't seem. It seems like his policies to address it are not up to where they need to be. They're not up to what the science says. They're not up to the progress we could be making.
Kevin, here's the thing. I've seen John McCain flip-flop on nearly every issue in this last year as he's going into this election, try to shore up his conservative base, etc. And he flip-flopped on oil drilling, as Kate just pointed out. But yet, this League of Conservation Voters record is not the last year. It's the last 26 years, and he's got a pathetic 24 out of 100. So has he been on the right side here his career and just changed the last second here, or has he been on the wrong side all along and it's been a fraud?
Well, he has been on the right side up until he decided to run as a presidential candidate. In that he was one of the, as Kate mentioned, one of the first to bring in proposed climate legislation. The Lieberman-Warner bill. Before that was the McCain Lieberman-McCain bill, or vice versa. Anyways, people in politics, the voters forget quickly, and citizens forget that long record. Even I forget that long record. But what has changed is that he did go from a champion on the climate issue to somebody who is now in a position where politics is overriding, politics and ambition is overriding what he believes in doing is right.
Brad, how about Obama? He's got a 96 out of 100 from the League of Conservation Voters. He has a 6-part plan, $150 billion in renewable energies. Is that lip service, or do you think he's very serious about this issue?
Well, I just want to say that I'm considerably less sympathetic to the record of McCain as the other bloggers. The reason that McCain has such a terrible record on the environment, from the LCV, is because he has a terrible record on the environment. He is an enemy of environmental regulation. He is an enemy of environmental protection, and his one moment of action on climate change was right after he had lost the election to George Bush, when he had been slandered by the Bush campaign, and he had this kind of what some people have called a moment of spite in opposing Bush's tax cuts and supporting climate legislation. And I think it's kind of important to point out that all of the things that all of the kind of good things that he supported, none of them came to fruition. He knew, I think, well that under a Republican Congress and under a Republican president, he could take kind of mavericky positions that weren't going to go anywhere. I mean, and he's surrounded himself with the same Republican, the same conservative, the same conservative lobbyists, industry lobbyists, who have been running the show over the last 8 years, or even that he's been working with for the last 30, all of his whole record in Congress.
And Obama.
Sorry, I mean, and on Obama, I think if we look just at climate and renewable energy, one thing is McCain does not believe in renewable energy. He does not support it. He's actively opposed it pretty much at every single turn in his record. And then Obama, you have a situation where the fundamental difference on their climate change issues, policies, is that McCain has said we should put a price on carbon, and that's about it. Whereas Obama has said we should put a price on carbon, and the federal government should work to support both progressive policies that build, in a broader economy, and also support renewable energy.
All right, guys, we got to wrap it right there. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Kevin. And Kate, I'm glad that KGB released you. You were very helpful today. Now, I want to tell you guys about a sad note real quick. It's Cause for Ecology lost a true visionary this week. He was a great champion of the cause, Philip Clapp. During his career, Philip worked for passage of the Safe Drinking Water Act and campaigned tirelessly against global warming. And, of course, we're going to miss him. And we'll also have a change here at meetthebloggers.org. Our producer, Paris Marone, who started the program and who's been with us all throughout, is going back to school, and we really appreciate Paris's work, and we're going to miss her. It was great working with her. She's done some outstanding work with us. All right, guys, that's all we have the time for today, and we are going to come back, of course, next week. And what we need you to do is go to meetthebloggers.org throughout the week, give us ideas on guests, issues, etc. And we'll see you next week at 1 p.m. on Friday Eastern and 10 a.m. Pacific. Until then, do something.